Day 16. Flying from Stavanger to Oslo. On an express train to the city center. Oslo tram. The bronze tiger sculpture, in front of Oslo Central Station. Oslo's main library.
Deichman Bjørvika.
Oslo Opera House. An interior view of the Opera House. The iconic waterfront building is renowned for its sloping white marble roof that rises from the fjord, allowing visitors to ascend, stroll along the summit, and gaze out over the Oslo fjord. Munch Museum. Inaugurated in 2020, the new museum is dedicated to the life and works of the Norwegian artist, Edvard Munch. Here at Munch, you will find 3 versions of the scream on a rotating schedule to protect them from light damage. Tempera and oil, probably from 1910. One of the museum's 6 lithographs from 1895. A drawing version with crayon from 1893. Waterfront promenade along the Akerbrygge Wharf. Salt, a cultural arena located next to the fjord. It is one of the city's largest outdoor seating areas, featuring several saunas, bars, food, and music. Akerbrygge Clock Tower. The food truck smells good, let's go check it out. Though they all look yummy. These are homier and tastier, to me. Next, we walked the ground of the 700-year-old Akershus Fortress.
Akershus festning.
Near the military settings, stands Glory Glory with Crutches, a sculpture by British artist Laura Ford, in 2016. A historic medieval stronghold, overlooking the Oslo fjord. This is where Quisling, a Nazi collaborator during World War II, was executed. The outer walls of the fortress. Pebble pathway and archway. The 3 12-pounder bronze cannons, cast in the 18th century. Michael von Sundt Square. The castle from the square, looking west. Norwegian Armed Forces Museum. We are now at the famous Vigeland Park. It is a permanent sculpture park located within Frognerparken. Featuring over 200 sculptures by Gustav Vigeland, it is the world's largest sculpture park made by a single artist. Boys Running, one of the 58 bronze sculptures from the Bridge series. Man Throwing Woman. Woman with long hair. Man Chasing 4 Geniuses. The iconic little boy.
Sinnatøggen.
The angry boy. The fountain. Water is used within the fountain complex, surrounded by 20 tree groups, symbolizing the tree of life. The monolith. The sculpture depicts 121 human figures clinging and floating together, with women and men of different ages, and crowned with children. symbolizing the generational continuity of life. The Wheel of Life. It is designed as a rotating wreath of women, men, and children, holding on to each other for eternity. Vigeland Museum, the former studio and residence where sculptor Gustav Vigeland lived and worked. A statue of Gustav Vigeland at the entrance. Vigeland at work. Here, you can see not only the original plaster versions of the sculptures found in the park, such as the monolith, the angry boy, the fountain, modeling the Wheel of Life in clay and casting in plaster. You can also admire his other works, such as the marble sculpture, Young Man and Woman. One of Vigeland's original plaster models, the prostrate couple too. Old woman watches her husband die. Visiting the historical museum. Currently hosting premier Viking Age exhibits, including
Midgird,
the mythical world of the Vikings. A replica of the serpent head prow of the Viking ship, Osberg, Norway's national treasure. The original is housed in this museum. When you enter, you feel like you've stepped into the world of Norse mythology.
During the Viking Age, Norse mythology explained natural phenomena beyond comprehension. This installation symbolizes Thor, the Norse god of thunder. In Norse mythology, Odin, the All-Father, is a master of shape-shift, often transforms into animals, including snakes, eagles, and birds. The legendary tale of the Swords in Rock.
Sverd i fjell.
In 872 AD, King Harald Fairhair gathered all of Norway under one crown. The largest sword represents the victorious king, while the other two symbolize the defeated petty kings. In Norse mythology, serpents have a significant place. More than 1,200 years ago, the Vikings affixed a serpent's head to the prow of the Osberg ship. Perhaps they believed that doing so would endow the vessel with a certain special divine power.
When the Osberg ship was discovered in 1904, it was the world's best preserved Viking ship. Due to its fragile state, the real serpent's head from the ship has been kept in storage, until now. This national treasure is scheduled to move to the new Viking Age Museum in 2027, where it will be reunited with other Osberg ship artifacts, and displayed in its original form for the first time. The Royal Palace, and the equestrian statue of King Charles XIV John of Sweden and Norway. The changing of the Royal Guards. The National Theatre. Statue of the Norwegian composer and violinist, Johan Halvorsen. Oslo City Hall. The Nobel Peace Center, situated at City Hall Square, is the museum dedicated to the achievements of all Nobel Peace Prize laureates. Carved into the main facade are three words: broad-mindedness, hope, and commitment. While the center is a museum dedicated to the prizes, the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony is held annually here, at the City Hall. The Storting building, the seat of the Parliament of Norway. Oslo Cathedral at sunset. Day 18, the day before the conclusion of our trip to Norway. We took a ferry to Bygdøy Peninsula, across from Oslo and often known as Museum Island. We first visited an open-air museum, the Norwegian Folkemuseum. The museum's crown jewel, the Gullstave Church, a medieval church featuring traditional Nordic wooden architecture. Built in 1212 in the Gull region of Norway, the structure was dismantled in the 1880s, moved to this site, and rebuilt. Stepping inside, to take a look at the church. The roof ribs, built by the Vikings, make the ceiling resemble an inverted Viking ship. A few wall paintings from Lutheran Church still remain in its chancel and apse to this day. 160 historic buildings were relocated from across Norway. Storehouse from Bråtveit. The barn from Garsvik. Dairy farms with pastures. Waiting room for steamship passengers. A museum guide in traditional bunad costume explains how isolated villages were influenced by the Reformation. On the way out, we caught a glimpse of the new museum of the Viking Age, under construction. A rendering of the final project from the construction hoarding. When the new museum opens in 2027, visitors will be able to view the Oseberg ship, along with two other well-preserved ancient vessels. Adjacent to the famous Fram Museum, stands a relatively niche museum, the Kon-Tiki Museum. Here you can see the famous vessel and maps, used by the Norwegian explorer and anthropologist, Thor Heyerdahl, during the Kon-Tiki expedition, widely regarded as the greatest seafaring adventure in modern history. This is the original Kon-Tiki balsa wood raft, used by Thor Heyerdahl.
On April 28, 1947, Heyerdahl embarked on his most famous expedition, aimed at proving that ancient peoples could sail from South America to Polynesia using primitive vessels. He constructed a pre-Columbian-style raft using local Peruvian balsa wood and named it Kon-Tiki, after a legendary Inca god. Thor Heyerdahl and his team set sail of this balsa wood raft from Peru, covering 4,300 miles over 101 days, before finally crashing into a reef at Roroya Island in French Polynesia. All 6 members landed safely and returned home. This scene reenacts the whale-shark encounter during the voyage. Later, in 1970 and 1977, Heyerdahl utilized 2 reed boats, Ra-2 and Tigris, to demonstrate the possibility of ancient transatlantic contact, and the existence of maritime exchanges between great civilizations in Arabian Peninsula.
Visiting the Fram Museum. What we are looking at is the world's most famous polar ship, the 1892 original Fram.
The Fram was built specifically for the Arctic expedition led by Norwegian explorer, Fridtjof Nansen, in 1893. By that time, many attempts to force ships through the Arctic ice to reach the North Pole had already failed. Fridtjof Nansen had a plan. I will build a strong ship, so constructed, that it can withstand the pressure of the ice, and living in this ship, to float across with the ice. It will be just big enough to carry provisions for 12 men for 5 or 6 years. Based on his idea, Norway's first polar exploration vessel, the Fram, was born. Its hull was rounded, utilizing the compressive forces generated by the ice to lift the vessel up, rather than letting it be crushed. On July 21, 1893, the Fram left Norway. 2 months later, the ship froze into the ice, beginning its long drift. On March 14, 1895, Nansen and Johansen left the Fram to attempt to reach the North Pole on skis. On August 13, 1896, the Fram broke free from the ice. Nansen and Johansen returned to Norway. On August 20, 1896, after a 3-year drift, the Fram returned to Norway. This 3D model depicts the scene in January 1895, when the hull succumbed to immense pressure from the ice. With the situation critical, the crew was forced to rapidly transfer supplies and equipment to a safe zone while preparing to abandon ship. Although Nansen's expedition failed to achieve its primary objective of reaching the North Pole, his concepts regarding hull design, as well as his predictions concerning the course of ocean currents, were fully vindicated when the Fram finally broke free from the ice near Greenland.
Step onto the main deck to experience what the expedition team felt when enduring violent storms aboard the Fram during her maiden voyage. The climax came when the Fram was finally locked tight within the ice, brought to a complete standstill. At that moment, you not only felt the biting cold of the polar regions and heard the floes grinding against the hull, but you even felt the deck beneath your feet trembling. And all of this precisely recreated the core element of Nansen's 1893 to 1896 expedition, deliberately freezing the Fram into the Arctic pack ice and allowing it to drift across the Arctic, harnessing the power of ocean currents. A small hatch leads us to the engine room and the living quarters. The dining area. Food storage. The wardroom. The cabin where Nansen worked and lived during the expedition voyage.
Subsequently, during Roald Amundsen's 1910 to 1912 Antarctic expedition, the Fram reached the Bay of Whales at 78 degrees 41 minutes south, setting a record for the southernmost point attained by a vessel. Consequently, the Fram became the only wooden ship to visit both the northernmost and southernmost navigable regions of the globe. After disembarking, Amundsen undertook a long overland journey to become the first person to reach the South Pole. This beautiful wooden vessel is Gjøa, a polar exploration ship used by Amundsen, who often referred to it as his little fishing boat. In 1903, Amundsen sailed her over the course of 3 years to successfully navigate the Northwest Passage for the first time. Following his Antarctic expedition, Amundsen turned to challenge the Arctic. Having failed to drift across the Arctic Ocean, he sought to reach the North Pole by air. This is the N-25 Dorniewal seaplane he used in 1925.
Thanks to a 4D motion simulator, we get to experience Amundsen's perilous attempt to fly to the North Pole.
On May 21, 1925, 2 seaplanes, N-25 and N-24, aiming for the North Pole, reached 87 degrees 43 minutes north. On May 22, shortly after midnight, engine trouble and low fuel forced both planes down. The N-24 was severely damaged while landing on a lead in the Arctic ice and had to be abandoned. On June 15, Amundsen and his team executed a daring takeoff in the N-25 from a 500-meter runway they had painstakingly created from the ice, successfully returning to Norway. Amundsen's seaplanes experienced engine trouble. Emergency landing successful. Amundsen and his team, piloting the N-25, executed a forced takeoff from 500-meter-long ice airstrip they had spent nearly 4 weeks clearing. Successful takeoff, returning to Norway.
The Fram Museum brought our 19-day trip to Norway to a perfect close. Bidding farewell to Norway, we set out on the journey home. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.